Well, everybody already forgot about the Boston Celtics winning an NBA championship, and we are off with the 2024 NBA offseason. We have major breaking news. This is the Take Your Shot podcast. I'm your wonderful host, Joshua Getman, and we've got a lot to get into on today's show. We have two major coaching changes in the league. We have a trade that occurred yesterday. We have two major free agent signings, and we are going to discuss all of them right here on this fantastic Friday on the Take Your Shot podcast. So without further ado, without any other hesitations, let's get right into it. And let's start with the breaking news that shocked the league. JJ Redick, the ESPN ABC analyst for the NBA Finals, is getting hired by the Los Angeles Lakers to be their head coach. JJ Redick, a retired NBA veteran, 15 seasons included with the Orlando Magic, Milwaukee Bucks, LA Clippers, Philadelphia 76ers, New Orleans Pelicans, and Dallas Mavericks. And now he is going to the big stage in La La Land to coach LeBron James and Anthony Davis with Los Angeles. This was a developing story ever since Dan Hurley was essentially not going to take the Lakers job. We really thought that Dan Hurley was going to be intrigued by the Lakers job because, again, this is the Los Angeles Lakers. This is arguably the best franchise in basketball. Personally, I think it is. So if you want to hear more about that debate between the Lakers and the Celtics, go back to last Wednesday's episode where we debate that and hear my thoughts on that discussion. But going back to the conversation here, the Lakers' job was great. The Lakers are the Lakers. They are the pinnacle of basketball. And when Dan Hurley didn't take that, it was a little bit of a surprise, but I'm pretty sure most of the league was confident. Most reporters, most insiders were pretty assured that the Lakers were going to shift their focus now to JJ Redick. And JJ Redick has always been in the coaching conversation for the Lakers along with Dan Hurley. JJ Redick is somebody that has looked into coaching the past couple of years. I know he had an interview for Toronto last offseason. He interviewed with the Charlotte Hornets for their open head coaching position this offseason. And now, of course, he gets his opportunity to coach with the Los Angeles Lakers. And this was developing for a little bit. And the Lakers really decided to hire JJ Redick based on his analytical, based on his X's and O's. And most coaches really are either one of two things. They are a former player who can provide leadership, has that relationship aspect with the players, or they're more of an X's and O's kind of analytical guy. And the thing about JJ Redick is he sort of fits both of those categories. If you see him on his podcast, he's the sort of X and O's guys, but he is a former player. He has great relationships with guys that he's played with, like Joel Embiid, like a Jimmy Butler. He has those kind of relationships. And I forgot about Chris Paul as well, who is also rumored to potentially be interested in signing with LA this offseason. So JJ Redick is the pick for the Lakers, and something that is a necessity was the head coach, but it's not really the biggest need for the Los Angeles Lakers, of course, because they have a lot more to worry about with their roster. Of course, we know LeBron James has a player option this offseason, and most likely he's going to decline, but we all expect him to re-sign with the Lakers. Would be absolutely shocked if he went anywhere else. Of course, they have D'Angelo Russell going into NBA free agency as well. That is more of a up to debate whether he will stay or whether he will go. And if he does go, you're going to have to find a replacement for D'Angelo Russell because yes, he played pretty bad in the postseason, but D'Angelo Russell still gave you 18 points per game in the regular season. D'Angelo Russell at times was your third best player, so that would be a significant loss. They also have, of course, Spencer Dinwiddie in free agency, Jackson Hayes, Cam Reddish have player options. Torian Prince as well is in free agency. And of course, Max Christie is a restricted. Expect him to come back. But the problem with the Lakers is all the pressure is going to be on JJ Redick. The Lakers want a contender. The Lakers' expectations, their fans, they want a championship team and they expect a championship team. And it just seems unrealistic to put that pressure on JJ Redick because this Lakers team is a playing team. Let me give you a stat here that I heard the other day. The Los Angeles Lakers have only been a top six seed, essentially that playing line, the playing line cut, whether you're in the playoffs or the playing tournament. They have only been a top six seed one time out of the past 12 seasons. That one time was great. Don't take me granted. That was in the bubble. They were the one seed. They won the NBA title. Perfect 1 year. But you can just see that the Lakers haven't really been relevant any other year. The Lakers have to get back on track. And if the Lakers do get anywhere near the fifth or sixth seed, that is a major success for the Lakers, because you look at the other teams in the Western Conference. You look at the Dallas Mavericks of the world, who just made the finals, the Minnesota Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards, they're coming. The OKC Thunder, who just made a major trade, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, they're on the rise. You've also got teams looming like the Phoenix Suns. Don't forget about the Denver Nuggets, the NBA champions of 2023. You still have the Clippers in the mix. The Western Conference is difficult. And what's even worse for the Lakers is not only are the teams in front of them not getting any worse, the teams behind them are coming. The Houston Rockets, they're coming. The Houston Rockets are only going to get better this season. The San Antonio Spurs, what if they make a move? Victor Wembanyama wants to win now, and we know Wemby is only going to get better. The teams behind the Lakers are also improving as well. So there has to be this sort of a realistic expectation for JJ Redick going into that job. And I don't know if he's going to get that, because Lakers coaches have pretty much been kicked out after 2 years. You saw it with Frank Vogel. They won a championship with Frank Vogel 2 years after they won the title. Say goodbye to Vogel. And then Darvin Ham, a year after they made the conference finals in surprising fashion, and they lose to Denver in the first round in 5 games. But those 5 games were relatively close. They say goodbye to him as well. This is a tough job and a tough situation with high expectations. And can JJ Redick handle it? Can JJ Redick be the guy that the Lakers want? Can JJ Redick be that Steve Kerr for the Warriors? Can JJ Redick be an Eric Spoelstra? Can he be one of those guys? We will find out and see what that is. But the most important thing, though, for Redick is that he does have the relationship of the star player. We know that coming in. Yes, they weren't really close together while JJ was playing, but now, of course, they have their podcast, Mind the Game, and it is very important that Redick is close with LeBron James in there, in the locker room. He'll have to build a relationship with Anthony Davis, because remember, LeBron James, how many years left is he going to play? How many years is he going to be with the Lakers, be in the league? How many years before he retires? This is going to be a situation where this team is going to be revolved around Anthony Davis, not LeBron James. And LeBron James understands that, and James accepts that this team is going to be revolved that way. And Redick's going to have to be very close with Anthony Davis. And I know Davis liked James Borrego. Borrego was an assistant with him in New Orleans. He also liked a guy like Monty Williams, who was fired by Detroit, which we'll get to in a little bit. He also was an assistant with New Orleans with Davis. There were other candidates that the Lakers could have chosen that Davis might have preferred more. I don't know what Anthony Davis is thinking. Neither do the rest of the league. But Redick, that relationship with Davis will be crucial, and his developmental program. What is JJ Redick going to do to develop the Austin Reeves of the world, the Rui Hachimuras, the Max Christies? And I know Austin Reeves' agent came out and tweeted that he was excited for this head coaching hire. He thought third star BS, that's not happening anymore, because he thinks that Redick will turn Austin Reeves into this third star. And if he does, that will be great. That is the key. The Lakers are going to have to build internally, because there's not a lot they can do. They don't have a lot of cap room. They don't have a lot of draft flexibility here. The Lakers are going to have to build internally, and the only way to get better is to develop their players. Can Max Christie become a 12 to 15 point per game scorer this year and potentially be a most improved player? Can Austin Reeves step up his scoring, step up his defense, and be the solidified third best player on the Lakers? That is also yet to be seen, but that is something that JJ Redick could potentially do this year for the Lakers. And also something that will be interesting for the Lakers as we get closer and closer towards the draft, the development of Bronny James. Someone who can go in there, be that role model, be that leader for Bronny James. And the cool thing about it is Bronny James has really had this interesting perspective. He's not going in there and expecting to be a star. He wants to be a role player. He wants to be a Drew Holiday. He wants to be a guy who not necessarily is the star. He knows that he's not going to be one of those highly elite scorers. He's coming in with the mentality. He's going to be a defender first. He's going to play his role to perfection. And JJ Redick is one of the ultimate role players that we've had in the NBA for the past 20 years. Redick has been an amazing role player. He's had a long career as a role player, and a lot of role players don't get that long of a career and that many chances as Redick did. And Redick understands the shoes that Bronny James is going to have to fill. So I think he would be that potential perfect developmental coach. overall, the hire is what the hire is. You have to hire somebody, and the coaching market right now is very thin. You could go with assistant coaches. You could also have explored the opportunity of Monty Williams, but he just got fired the other day, and it's like too little, too late. And Redick, honestly, it's a risk. I wouldn't say a super high risk because you may fire him in 2 years and you may just start this whole process over again. But it is very rewarding. It is a risk, but there is a high reward to hiring Redick, considering we've seen him on his podcast. We've seen him break down the games. We've seen him with the schemes. We've seen him bring players on his podcast. We've seen the relationships he's formed with other players. So this could be a major success for the Lakers. I know the Lakers want to see him as the next Pat Riley, the next Spoelstra, the next Phil Jackson, someone that can be there, not only helping the Lakers' success in the short term with LeBron on the roster, but also developing the guys like Austin Reeves, Max Christie, Rui Hachimura, and transitioning Anthony Davis into the role of being the guy on the team for the long term. So overall, this is what the Lakers could do, and they did it. They hired JJ Redick. I really like JJ Redick as a media personality. I think he's going to be great as a head coach, and we will see what happens with the Lakers. If I had to guess, I'd probably expect him to go over his 2 seasons that, of course, Darvin Ham and Frank Vogel didn't get. I think Redick will have more seasons than that because eventually it's like you have expectations for this team, but at the same time, you've seen what this team has done the past couple of years. They haven't gone far enough. So I think Redick will be there for the long term. They gave him a 4-year contract. They made him a top 10 paid coach at $8 million a year annually. And again, as I said, we will see how this move goes for the Los Angeles Lakers. But I want to transition now to a trade that happened in the NBA. The Chicago Bulls and the Oklahoma City Thunder agreed to a trade yesterday. Actually, they swapped 1-for-1 straight up Alex Caruso to the Thunder and Josh Giddy to the Chicago Bulls. Now, for the Oklahoma City Thunder, this was a move that pretty much was inevitable, trading Josh Giddy. We saw it in the playoffs. Mark Daigneault benched Josh Giddy. Wasn't really with the team chemistry. He also is a third ball handler for OKC, and when you have a guy like Shea who's exceptional at ball handling, as well as Jalen Williams, who is also a pretty decent ball handler as well for the Thunder, you don't really need that third ball handler. They were essentially starting 3 ball dominant guards, and it just made sense to move on from Josh Giddy and getting a guy like Alex Caruso, someone who is an all NBA defender, someone who can really improve the perimeter defense of the Thunder along with Lu Dort. That is something that's great. And this move for the Thunder sort of reminds me of that Andre Iguodala move. Remember, Iguodala got traded to the Warriors in 2014, sort of that veteran helping out defensively, bringing leadership, bringing that veteran presence in the locker room for a young Golden State Warriors team, and they eventually won the championship. This Thunder team is on the same trajectory as the Warriors. I'm not going to say they're going to be a super dynasty and then another star joins them, but they are on the same trajectory, the same path as the Golden State Warriors, and they are going to be a championship threat for a while. And I think this Alex Caruso move is great. He's on an expiring contract. They can extend him 4 years, $78 million for the long term. And I think if you're the Thunder, this is a perfect move. And not only does he open up the perimeter defense, but Alex Caruso has been relatively underrated offensively this season. Caruso very quietly shot, if I'm not mistaken, 41% from the three-point line, 10 points per game, very efficient shooter. Of course, he is a great blocking great blocking guard, and he can also, of course, force turnovers, get steals. He is a great defender. He's a great glue guy. He's somebody that, not necessarily a star, but he is a star in his role. And for the Thunder, when you're trying to contend, when you're trying to compete against teams like the Timberwolves, like the Nuggets, like the Mavericks, you never know. You could be an Alex Caruso away from making the NBA Finals. And maybe what if in the playoffs, they had Caruso against Luka Doncic. They had Alex Caruso helping guard him along with Kyrie Irving. That series could have changed. They could have won game 2. They could have won a game 3. They could have even won a game 5 at home. That series dramatically could have changed with Caruso in the lineup. And I think for the Thunder, this is a great move. You need a veteran in there. And the fact that the Thunder gave up nothing. They gave up no picks. They gave up Josh Giddy, which, of course, we've seen the way he is been with this roster not necessarily the greatest fit. Not giving up any of the draft capital, keeping that draft capital potentially if one of those superstars become available. What if a Kevin Durant becomes available? What if a big star becomes available in the market? The Thunder have plenty of time to wait upon that. But the fact that they now still have all those picks to throw around, they gave up nothing, and they got better with Alex Caruso on the roster. He fits much better, and he is going to thrive in a starting guard position for this team. That is going to be a great thing. Now for Chicago's perspective on this, of course, I just mentioned that the Thunder didn't give up any picks. And I mean, the Thunder have how many picks? 17 picks? You didn't get one? You didn't get one first-round pick in this trade. It didn't make any sense to me, considering at the trade deadline, it was reported, obviously this may not be true, but it was reported that Caruso was going to be somebody who was offered for multiple first-round picks. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were offers on the table for multiple first-round picks. The Bulls said no. The Bulls wanted to make a playoff push. Of course, we know what happened there, lost in the play-in, once again being that average team that they have been the last couple of years. And now they get Josh Giddy, and honestly, it still may be a great move, even though they didn't get a first. I would have liked to see them get a first. But again, Josh Giddy is someone who really didn't get the fair opportunity, get the fair chance that he should have gotten with the Thunder. And it's not his fault. It's not the Thunder's fault. They just have two great ball handlers in Shea and Jay Williams. And now the Bulls are getting their ball handler of the future. They think Josh Giddy can become an all-star. He's a double-double, triple-double machine. He can give you 12 and 10. He can give you 12, 10, and 10 a game. Giddy could potentially be a future all-star, and Chicago has been looking for that ball handler. They've been looking for a guy to distribute, a guy to pass, a guy to open up the offense for guys like DeRozan, even when Levine was healthy. And now, of course, Kobe White. And that was with Lonzo Ball. Remember, Lonzo Ball was great at doing that, and of course, he got injured, and he hasn't played since. Expect Lonzo Ball to potentially be waived and to potentially be cut with this move now happening with the Bulls. But now the Chicago Bulls get this guy who is an offensive threat, is someone who can really distribute the ball, someone who can still find ways to score, and may not necessarily be the best shooter, but he is somebody that is very flexible. And he's potentially like, I would say a Ben Simmons, but a little bit of a better shooter. Ben Simmons when he was an all-star, of course, before all the injuries and the fading out in the Atlanta series. This is more like a Ben Simmons guy, someone who can be an all-star, someone who can get buckets, someone who can also defend at a high-quality level. And for how bad he shoots from the three-point line, he's not a bad overall shooter. He still shoots around 50% from the field. He's not that bad shooting overall. Giddy is somebody who could definitely be an all-star in the future. And if you're Chicago, you have to potentially give up an Alex Caruso. I mean, getting someone who can distribute the ball, which worked out well in 2022 when you were almost the one seed. You were the one seed for half the season. Then you fell off, of course, the 6th seed, Lonzo Ball getting injured, as I mentioned. But this is somebody that the Bulls were missing, and I think this would be a perfect fit for Chicago. And speaking about Chicago now that they have made this trade, it's now getting to the point where it's interesting if they're going to have a fire sale, if they are going to start trading everyone, because of course at the trade deadline they had the opportunity to do so. They could have traded DeMar, they could have traded Levine, they could have traded Alex Caruso there as well. And now the Bulls are in a position where they could lose DeRozan for nothing. He's an unrestricted free agent. Patrick Williams, they could lose. He's a restricted. Andre Drummond's going to walk for nothing. This is a bad situation for Chicago where they could have traded DeRozan and they didn't. But now they're deciding to go and trade Caruso, which probably the least expected to get traded first. Probably would have seen a Levine or Vucevic get traded before Caruso, but they did trade Caruso. And if this is a sign for what is to come for Chicago, expect a fire sale. And I've heard, according to sources, multiple teams are interested in getting Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is somebody, yes, he has a big contract, but he is somebody that can contribute to a contending team. Remember, Zach LaVine was a 25-point per game scorer. Zach LaVine can score the ball, people. He is not that bad of a player. Yes, he may be a negative asset because of his contract, but he's not that bad of a player, people. Let's relax about that. So the Chicago, are they going to do it? I don't know. Was this just a move to potentially get somebody that they really like in Josh Giddy? Maybe, but this could also be a sign to come. And Chicago really needs this rebuild. They cannot be stuck in the middle. This is something that the Bulls have had a problem for. I really personally think that Chicago would be better off rebuilding, and they had their chance to trade DeRozan, get maybe a pick or two back, get a young player. Now he could walk for nothing. And the thing is, you have to be careful if you're Chicago, because if you trade everybody away, let's say you get rid of Levine, Vucevic, DeRozan now is a free agent. Is he just going to sign back? Maybe if you don't trade assets yet, maybe DeRozan would sign back. You could sign and trade him, of course. But if you trade all these guys, you're going to lose DeRozan for nothing. So you have to be careful in that aspect, unless you're willing to give up DeRozan for nothing, which I think is idiotic and absolutely stupid, considering you had the opportunity to get rid of him. But if Chicago goes about that, they go about that and they move on with their business. But they have to be particularly careful with that. And Zach LaVine, they're going to have to make a right move for him. And they don't really want to throw on a first-round pick, but they potentially have to. And if you want to move on to this rebuilding phase, you have to say goodbye to Zach LaVine. You may have to give up one of those picks, because at the end of the day, Chicago has been an average team now for the past couple of seasons. They have not been past the first round. They tried this DeRozan experiment. It hasn't worked. There's been injuries. There's been problems with the chemistry, problems with coaching. It's not been this perfect situation, and it looked like it would have been, but of course, injuries got in the way. So Chicago has to make a decision, and ultimately, they may have to move on from guys and actually start a rebuild and build around a guy like Coby White. Coby White was really a bright side of Chicago this season. He really showed a lot of flashes that he hasn't shown in the past. Remember, he was runner-up for most improved player, an 18-point per game scorer, and Coby White could potentially become an all-star as well. You could see a Coby White, Josh Giddy backcourt pairing in 5 to 6 years being an all-star duo and leading Chicago to the playoffs. That is very possible and realistic. But you can't have Zach LaVine in the mix holding up those two guys' development. Of course, you got rid of Alex Caruso, which helps that. But you can't have Zach LaVine in the mix as well, and they're going to have to find a way to trade him. And if this is the direction Chicago goes, I fully support it. I fully agree with the direction. I'm just saying, why not 6 months ago? Why not at the trade deadline? Too little, too late for Chicago. They could have gotten more, and at least they're doing it now because, again, you cannot be an average team in this league. That's not how the NBA works. It will kill you if you're an average team, because you will be average, you will have no good draft capital, and you will still be near or over the salary cap. You have to make the decision to rebuild, because this team is just not good enough. In an Eastern Conference where they were relatively not healthy this year, the East is going to be back. You're going to have Philadelphia. You're going to have, of course, Milwaukee in that mix. You have New York as well. And there's some other teams that are still, even Cleveland, Indiana, Miami's of the world. They're still ahead of a team like Chicago. This is a team that's relatively not even close to the pinnacle of the East. They're going to have to make a decision, and that decision should very well be to rebuild. And I think this is a great start for Chicago by getting rid of Caruso, and they should continue that with Zach LaVine as well as Vucevic. And teams should look out for, because I'm not saying those guys suck. Those guys are great, and those guys could help contending teams. I think contending teams should be very interested in those guys, and I think it would benefit. But Chicago has to make sure they get assets. They get the proper assets to fully commit to a rebuild and fully start to a rebuilding process around Josh Giddy and Coby White. But I want to move on and talk about the Detroit Pistons, because they did decide to make a move in firing their head coach, Monty Williams. Of course, Monty Williams got that historic 6-year, $78 million contract out of the Pistons. And at that time, that was the largest head coaching contract in the history of the NBA. Of course, Greg Popovich got his extension. Eric Spoelstra got his. Steve Kerr obviously got a little bit money as well. But at the time, that was the biggest contract extension. And I really feel bad for Monty Williams in this situation, because Monty really was dealing with issues. I know his wife had cancer. He didn't really want to be with the Pistons. I mean, no offense, who would want to be with the Pistons? But they kept on giving him more and more money. And then eventually Williams was like, yes, well, I'll take it, because it is a large contract. And at the end of the day, money is money. And he took the job. And then after going 14-68, and having that 28-game losing streak, you go about your way, you hire a new president. You don't fire Monty Williams immediately. You wait a couple of months. You hire a new president. The president is talking with Monty Williams about plans for next season, and then the owner decides, hey, let's pull the plug. And now you still owe him $65 million. You committed, you fired him, and you still owe him this money. And that's the decision Detroit decided to make. It makes no sense to me because Monty Williams is a credible coach. Monty Williams is a great coach. We saw what he did in Phoenix. Of course, there was the fallout with him and DeAndre Ayton. They decided to move on with the new owner, Matt Ishbia, but he was great in Phoenix. He was a great head coach, and I think he will still be a great head coach when he decides the opportunity is right to go back to coaching. I don't think he's going to coach this season because of the situations with his personal life, but Monty was a great NBA head coach, and if you're Detroit, I don't understand this move because you still have to pay him all this money, and he's a still quality level coach, and it takes time to develop a team. Yes, they had a 28-game losing streak, but they got better throughout the season. Cunningham was injured a lot. Asar Thompson was injured a lot. They got better a little bit after the trade deadline. This is going to be a process for Detroit, and they have to take their time with it. This is the problem with the league now with coaches, GMs, presidents, owners. They really don't blame necessarily themselves. They really just pull the plug on the coaches. They don't even blame the superstars. They just decide, hey, it's not working well. Okay, it's probably 100% the coach. Let's pull the plug on the coach. And that is the league these days, and it is not good. You're giving coaches guaranteed money, and then you're just pulling the plug, and you still owe him money. It makes no sense to me why Detroit is doing this move, and especially doing this move 2 months after they could have. Their season was over in April. They could have made this move immediately after the season was over. They could have made this move when the season was going on, when this was a disaster. I get you still have to pay him, which obviously no matter what time the firing would have happened, you still would have to pay him. But at the end of the day, now you're in the position where you're going to have to scramble, find a head coach quickly before the NBA draft. And this is a move that makes absolutely no sense to me. And this just is a reflection of the Detroit Pistons organization. There's a reason why the Pistons haven't done anything in years. They haven't won a playoff series since 2008. 2008. Yikes. That is a disaster. 28-game losing streak. There's a reason because this team is a disaster. And every time they tank, it's absolutely hilarious. They get the number 5 pick every time they're the worst team in the league. They drop 4 spots to the worst possible position with the number 5 pick. It's absolutely hilarious every single year. It's the most fun. It's the funniest thing to me with that poverty franchise. But Detroit now is going to have to decide who their head coach is going to be. I know they talked with Dallas's assistant head coach. I'm not 100% sure about the name on the back of my head. I know they also talked to Mike Ganori of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think they're also interviewing JB Bickerstaff, former Cleveland Cavalier head coach. And maybe you give it to JB Bickerstaff. Maybe you give it to Mike Ganori. Those two are interesting candidates that I really, really respect and really like in this profession. Bickerstaff, of course, was fired from Cleveland for really no reason at all. I mean, they made the second round for the first time since LeBron left and the first time without LeBron since like 1996. They also were injured. The Cavs could have beaten the Celtics maybe if they were healthy, but of course Mitchell was out the last 3 games of the series. That could have been very interesting if they were to win a game 4 or a game 5 and made that series interesting. And then Jared Allen was out the whole series against the Celtics. What are you going to do? It's the Celtics. They were the greatest team in the league and you were injured. 2 of your best players were out. What do you expect, Cleveland? So that firing made no sense to me considering he rebuilt that organization. He built that organization to relevancy once again, and he got fired for some reason. And yet they're still with their own head coaching search and their own head coaching problems as well. I think Bickerstaff would be a great voice, someone who can really work a team, lead a young group of men. I think also Mike Ganori, he proved himself a little bit in that Minnesota Timberwolves Denver Nuggets second round series as well. While he was coaching on the sidelines, he really elevated his coaching stance and respect around the league by helping head coach the Timberwolves over the defending NBA champions Denver Nuggets in the playoffs. I think that would also be a decent move. Maybe look at a guy like Sam Cassell with the Celtics. You got Chris Quinn in Miami. There are Kenny Atkinson, of course, with Golden State in that conversation with Cleveland as well. James Borrego with New Orleans, the former head coach of the Hornets. He's in the conversation with the Cavs like Atkinson. There are a lot of options for Detroit, but the move really makes not a lot of sense at this particular time. And now if you're Detroit, you've got the 5th pick once again. Again, absolutely hilarious. But you don't have any stability. You don't have a head coach going there, looking at guys who are working out for the team. You don't have a lot of time with the coach, with the president evaluating. And the funny thing was, the president was fine with Monty Williams. The new president liked Monty Williams. They were working on a plan for next season. And then the owner, Tom Gore, goes like, nope, not happening. We're firing Monty. It made no sense. And now the president gonna have to scramble, gonna have to find a new coach quickly because again, the draft is next Wednesday. The draft is in 6 days. The Pistons don't have a lot of time here. And if they don't have a head coach before the draft, that is a problem. That is a concern. And this just shows how miserable that poverty franchise is. I want to go on, though, and talk about Pascal Siakam because he is going to return to the Indiana Pacers on a major maximum extension. As expected, he signed a 4-year, $189.5 million deal to remain an Indiana Pacer. And, of course, he got traded to the Indiana Pacers from the Toronto Raptors for Bruce Brown, Jaden Nora, a couple picks there as well. And this was a move for the Pacers that worked out particularly well. Of course, they made the conference finals. They got swept by the Celtics. It was a very close sweep, though. Don't forget about that. There was 3 games at least that the Pacers should have and arguably could have won in that series. You also have a bright future with your young roster. And now that Siakam is locked up, what do the Pacers do next? What do the Pacers do to continue to improve? They have a great roster now with Halliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, and Turner. That's a great starting 5. But again, what are you going to do to improve this roster? You don't really have a lot of free agents. The only one I'm worried about for Indiana is Obi Toppin. And if they want to match a offer sheet that maybe a team with high salary cap would give him, that could be a problem because I think Obi Toppin was great for the Indiana Pacers overall this season. But the Pacers have assets. The Pacers still have a couple of picks to make a move here. And what are the Pacers going to do? Because, yes, they made the conference finals. But, again, Sixers are coming. They've got a lot of cap room. Milwaukee's not out of the conversation. If the Knicks were fully healthy, they probably would have beaten the Indiana Pacers. These teams are coming. Indiana is going to have to be in the mix, be in the conversation. And, yes, it's a young team with Halliburton. Siakam's in his young 30s. This is not a very old team, but at the same point, you want to be competitive in the Eastern Conference. So what is next for the Pacers? Of course, it's great that they locked up Siakam. He was very impactful for the Pacers all season long, helping them get to a conference finals in the first place. 22.5 points per game. In the postseason, he averaged 22 as well. 7.5 boards, 4.5 assists. He was a very impactful player for Indiana, and he really opened up the floor. A very good person at attacking, at putting pressure on the defense. They're giving 3-point shooters on Indiana an opportunity, even making their offense bloom. But what Indiana needs, they're going to have to find someone who's a high-quality defender, like an Alex Caruso who got traded to OKC. Someone like that. Someone who can be a glue guy for them. Someone who can be that sort of dog mentality, if you guys know what I'm saying. Maybe get it in free agency. Maybe make a trade. But something has to happen for the Pacers because, yes, it was all great. You made this magical run, but Milwaukee was injured. New York was injured. Plain and simple. You're going to have to improve. And this is something that this run in particular reminds me a lot about that Atlanta Hawks run in, what year was it? 21. They ran it back. They did absolutely nothing. The East got healthier. The East got better. And then they were the 8th seed, and they got first rounded. This could be that same situation that occurred in Atlanta a couple of years ago, but Indiana should not want that to happen. They saw what Atlanta did a couple of years ago. They do not want the same to happen. So what are you going to do if you're the Pacers? Because you've got a great core, you've got a great foundation, you've got a great future to go with here.
And I think the Andrew Nemhard has the potential to be an all-star. I think he's that great of a player. I think if you develop a guy like Ben Shepherd, he can become a high-quality starter. And you've got, of course, Benedict Mathurin, who will come back in the lineup. He had a sensational rookie year, a little bit of a down sophomore year before he got injured. But again, he's shown flashes of being a great scorer. But where are the Pacers going to find their defense? They need a high-quality defender who either is going to come off the bench, probably not start because I think their starting lineup's pretty set there, unless they decide if they want to move on from Miles Turner, which don't look at me, but that's a decent idea to explore now that I think about it. Maybe you could move on from Miles Turner. I don't know. Put Siakam at center, maybe go small ball here, or you could just get another center who's a better defender. You could do that as well if you're Indiana. But if you don't do that, I think the starting lineup's set. I just think you need a guy who can just bring intensity, bring fight, like a guy like Patrick Beverley, for example, someone like that. That I think that would be a great fit for Indiana, but they should be happy that they locked up Pascal Siakam. This was expected, of course. We're not surprised that this happened at all. And the Indiana Pacers are going to be right back in the mix at the top of the Eastern Conference. Another free agent signing I want to get to, though, which was a little bit of a surprise here, was Malik Monk. Malik Monk decided to re-sign with the Sacramento Kings on a 4-year, $78 million contract, which for personally for me, that was the surprise of these first couple of days here, because people really thought Malik Monk was going to get paid bigger than this. People thought Malik Monk was going to get a larger contract than this. And from a team like Orlando, a team who has a lot of cap room, could have been given more money. But I guess Malik Monk was satisfied with the Sacramento Kings, satisfied with what he was doing off the bench there, and decided to continue to be a member of that organization. And the thing is about Sacramento, you like that you kept Malik Monk. That's all great and good. But at the end of the day, if you're the Kings, you were the 9 seed. You didn't make the playoffs. You had a great season 2 years ago. The 3 seed, of course, should have beaten the Golden State Warriors, lost in 7 games at home when Steph Curry had 50 points, an absolutely incredible performance by an NBA legend. But they should have won that series. They didn't really have a down year per se, but the West got a lot better. I think they had only like 1 or 2. They only won 3 less games than they did last year, yet they were the 9 seed because the West is so much better and the West is competitive. And that is a problem for a team like Sacramento looming in the middle, a team like the Lakers, a team like the Suns. We're just looming in the middle here, and the Pelicans as well, looming in the middle here in the Western Conference when you've got the top 4 teams, and it's very difficult to get up to that level, even though your roster is pretty decent, because this Kings roster, it's not terrible. You've got Fox, you've got Sabonis, you've got Keegan Murray, who will be a future All-Star, in my opinion. You've got Barnes and Huerter coming back, but the question is, can you flip a Harrison Barnes? Can you flip a Kevin Huerter into somebody great, into a star, along with draft capital? And somebody that could be very interesting for the Sacramento Kings is Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, of course, with that contract dispute with the Miami Heat, I think personally he would fit right in with Sacramento, provide them something that they're not necessarily great at in defense, be a guy who can attack the basket along with Fox. I think he would work great in the pick and roll with Sabonis. He can be a secondary ball handler for De'Aaron, and De'Aaron can work off the ball like somebody like Tyrese Maxey did with the James Harden. This could very well work for Sacramento. I think they have the assets to do it. They may have to give up Davion Mitchell as well, along with Huerter and Barnes to match the money, but along with draft capital, obviously. But a kind of guy like who can really elevate this team to back to the top of the Western Conference, because Sacramento doesn't have a lot of options here. Neither do a lot of teams in the Western Conference. A lot of them are in tough positions with the way this wild West is forming, but they're going to have to make a move, just like the Pacers are in the East. This is a similar team, a similar situation here. Great season a couple of years ago, but the West got tougher, and you're going to have to do something to improve. And the thing about it is, you have the flexibility to do that. You have the flexibility to go out there and make a move. And I think a guy like Jimmy Butler, someone who may be the best option available for you, someone who can maybe not necessarily be all in the regular season, but someone who can help you in the postseason, someone who could potentially provide you chaos in the postseason, be somebody that's a really big glue guy. And I think it would fit perfectly with the way this roster is constructed. Of course, guys like maybe Colby Jones and Sasha Venikov would have to step up for this team because, of course, they would drain a lot of their assets. But the Kings have that opportunity. They have a chance to trade for a superstar, and I think the time is now. De'Aaron Fox is in his prime. Sabonis is in his prime. This Kings team, if they want to be maximized, they have to make a move. Of course, they extended Mike Brown, who I think has done an excellent job with Sacramento overall because of how he basically revived that organization. And now they're only a move away from making the West even more interesting. And I love Malik Monk. I think he was great. I think he did great things for Sacramento this year, and he will continue to be a great piece for the Kings. 15 points per game off the bench, 5 assists. That is great numbers for a sixth man of the year. But the question is, what is next for the Kings? What is next for teams like the Pacers and the Kings? It's great that you get your guys back. It's great you re-sign them. But again, your teams were not good enough, and we are looking for the next move. They're going to be relevant, of course, both of them, going back to Indiana as well. But at the end of the day, these teams need to contend, and they have to make moves because they are not in a position here where they are going to have any shot at winning their conference. It's just that plain and simple, and that is why these moves are going to be necessary. Now, I think that's it for today. A little bit of a quick Friday episode because, of course, it is the off season, a little bit tired, a little bit overworked from doing the 3 episodes a week with the NBA Finals, the NBA postseason. We will be going back to 1 episode a week, except for the NBA Draft Special. That will be on Monday, coming out Monday. I might do it this weekend, but it will definitely come out Monday, previewing the NBA Draft, everything that you need to know about some of the prospects, some of the teams that have interesting decisions to make. And of course, we will explore Bronny James. Obviously, that will be a big part in the show. What will the Hawks do? What will the Spurs do with their 2 picks? It's going to be a very interesting draft night. The offseason has just begun, and this is just the preliminary. This is just the start of it. JJ Redick to LA, Caruso trade, that is nothing because the offseason is going to be crazy. That is how it is every year, and teams will make major moves, and there will be an unexpected team at one point that will make a move that will shock the league. That's just how every offseason works, and who could be that team? You don't know, but this is going to be a great offseason. It's going to be very exciting. I'm happy that the season is over. It's absolutely hilarious that everybody basically forgot about the Celtics winning the title. They do have their championship parade today. It'll probably be going on while this episode is posted, so shout out to them. It's funny, though, that everybody forgets about that with JJ Redick and the Caruso trade and all that. But it is the NBA. It is a revolving circle and a revolving world in this league. So thank you very much for watching. Remember to please subscribe to the YouTube. Leave a like. It would mean a lot to me as we are trying to grow this channel. You guys have done a great job in doing that so far and continue to do that for me, please. Also, follow me on Instagram at take_you_shot_podcast_. That would mean a lot. And don't forget, tell me how you would have taken your shots on these takes. I like when you guys tell me, when you watch the podcast, I disagree with this. I disagree with this. It's awesome. This is a sports debate show. We are going to have different opinions, and that's how it's going to be. That is how the sports world is. And it's okay because that's sports, man. That's the beauty of sports. So I want to hear how you think I'm saying things. Am I making right takes? Am I making bad takes? Tell me why. I would love to hear from you guys. That would mean a lot. And we will see you Monday for the draft special. After the draft special episodes, we'll go back to Fridays. Free agency is coming. 9 days until players can sign with other teams. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be awesome, as I mentioned. And we will see you Monday for the draft spectacular. Thank you very much.